I'd like to welcome you to our second L4 AM pre-conference webinar. My name is Richard Coleman, and I'd like to introduce myself very briefly since I'll be your host. My wife, my 5 kids, and I live in Addis Ababa, where I serve at Bingham Academy and also serve as the staff of IVASU, which is a member of the IFES student movement. Now tonight, we're going to hear from Mark Kolo and Bishop Calisto Odede. Their webinar is titled Leadership in Missions for the Next Generation. So let's meet our presenters for the evening. I'm going to read from a slide that will be put up that will give you a brief bio of each of the presenters, and you can read along with me. So first we have Bishop Calisto Odede, is the current Chancellor of Pac University and is also the presiding bishop of CITAM. He took over the leadership. He is currently the presiding bishop of CITAM. He graduated from Kenyatta University, Trinity International University, and Bethany International University. He worked with the Fellowship of Christian Unions with students in universities and colleges for 13 years. This included pioneering and directing the Commission Conference, which is currently a major student missions conference in Africa. He then served with the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students, covering the Eastern and the Horn of Africa in the English and Portuguese-speaking Africa. Reverend Odede has served as senior pastor of CITAM Woodley, CITAM Karen, CITAM Valley Road, and was the senior pastor of Nairobi Baptist Church. He's married to Elizabeth, and they have 3 sons between them, Victor, Benson, and Michael. He took over the mantle from Bishop Emeritus Dr. David Ogende on May 21st, 2021, when he was installed as the 3rd Chancellor. So, Karibu Sana, Bishop Odede. And then also, we'll be hearing from Mark Kolo. Mark, I don't know if I should say to you, Bawoni or Kedu, but Mark Kolo is a follower of Jesus, husband to Amina, father of Sisa, Ashe, and Yebo, and director of global activation. Since 1998, he has been involved in mobilizing the church in Africa for global mission. He is passionate about seeing a generation of young people ignited and empowered to fulfill the Great Commission. Gentlemen, welcome. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to be with you and have you on this evening call. A joy just to share together on leadership in mission for the next generation. I'll just head straight on. Just a bit of an introduction in terms of the subject at hand. I attended a function on an OM ship in 1980, I think it was 86, a ship called Doulos. And on that ship, they showed us the needs, a video pointing out the needs of the world. And something happened to me then. I caught a vision of the world. I bought a map of the world, took it to my room. I was a student then, pinned it on my wall, and regularly I would pick up a card for one of the countries in the world out of the 70 needy countries that they had presented. And I would regularly pray over the needs of the world. But I caught this vision as a young man, as a student who joined others in participating in a function in an OM meeting. As a result of that, when I did leave the university, my life was never actually the same. I joined a Christian ministry, and one of my assignments was to organize a missions conference, commission conference that's bringing together students from the continent of Africa. And since 1988, that conference has been going on once every year. I became a director for, I think, 4 times before finally I left the Fellowship of Christian Union, where I was serving then. I'm mentioning this to point out that through that convention, which was targeting young people, quite a lot of people were thrust into the mission field. Subsequently, through IFES, another mission conference was organized in West Africa, NIFEST conference, and bringing together thousands of students. Another one more recently was also organized in South Africa, Masia, again bringing together hundreds of students, all of them actually challenging people in the area of missions. So I'm saying that the vision for mission can actually be born in the heart of a young person if we target them and give them an opportunity to be challenged enough. It happened to me, and through the conferences that I've been watching and participating in, it has happened to lots of other people as well. Thank you. Now, research that a number of years ago, when I used to work for the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students, we conducted, showed that the age group at which people get into conversion, the highest number, is actually age 13 to age 15. Close to 50% of all people who became Christians between age 13 and age 15. And the next large chunk of that was age 16 to 17, and then 19 to 21. Now, when we look at these statistics, the older people grow, the less actually they become open to the message of the gospel, which emphasizes to us, again, the needs of ministry, especially age 13 to 21, and that this is a critical age that if we targeted it, not only would they become born again, but also they tend to be very, very open to engage in missions. Next slide as we move on. George Banner Research Group recently conducted a research which was just released early this year. We had it released in sections of the world, and the one that was released in Nairobi showed us that out of the 26 countries that the research was conducted in, there were some very interesting statistics. In Africa, the research was conducted only in 4 countries: Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and in Kenya. And the research was targeting age 13 to 17. It was called the Open Generation. And next slide, just a few things that I want to pick up out of that research just to show us. Globally, when and the figures they were dealing with in terms of research were over 1,000 young people, both Christians and non-Christians from different faiths. But globally, out of those who said they were Christians, 22% of them were the ones who were committed, and then 30% were nominal, and 48% they just identified themselves as Christians, neither here nor there. In Kenya, however, 64% said they were committed, and 28% said they were nominal Christians, and then 9 who just identified themselves as Christians, which means 92% of the group in Kenya actually said they were committed, they were Christians. And we move on again. And to the question, my generation has the ability to make a meaningful impact. The young people were asked this question, and basically what they said was that globally 44% agreed strongly that actually young people can make a great impact in the world. In Kenya, 67% agreed that they can make an impact in the world. We go on to the next slide. What actually comes out is that what was called the CITAM theorem by Kenneth Strachan, a missionary in Latin America. He said the expansion of any group or movement is in direct proportion to how they mobilize their entire membership in the propagation of their beliefs. Now, the mobilization is not just limited to one group. The mobilization is for everyone. That when we mobilize everyone, the young, the old, that will actually help in the spread of our faith. It's the missionary evangelist from Latin America, David Howard, who was well known for his mission work among young people, who said, when students, that's the next slide, when students decide to act, things happen. That is the history of mission. For the missionary movement has a tremendous vitality, often sparked by students with a worldwide vision. David Howard, who worked among students in university in the USA, is actually pointing out that when students are mobilized, things happen. And when I think of the history of mission, whether globally, from the haystack movement on to all the narratives, the Cambridge Seven in the UK, when I think of the history of missions, you cannot speak about the history of mission without actually mentioning students. That students have often been at the core and the forefront when it comes to mission ventures. And students are mobilized, students are greatly have passion, and students are in majority in a number of our countries. We have as many as 3,000 students in some of our institutions here in Kenya, all of them loving the Lord and quite engaged. And this is quite a resource that if we were to miss this resource, that would be actually quite unfortunate to miss that resource. Okay, now there are various dimensions which of students' engagement that we need to think about. When we think of the table of missions, it becomes unstable without any of these legs working properly. The vision holders, the workers, the funders, and the prayers. The vision holders, next slide again, people who are recruiting, mobilizing, and training. And the workers are people who are either in the marketplace, career, tent making, cross cultural, or the storytellers. And then the funders are individuals or churches or organizations who are giving. And then the prayers are people who are involved in praying for missions. And students can actually fit in any of these four legs of the table of missions in order to bring about great engagement. They can be vision holders who are mobilizing, recruiting. They can be workers who are going out, either students in countries where there are needs, or they can be funders, or they can be prayers. And at the same time, we need to think of how to expose students to the practice of missions. And there are three areas which we can use in order to expose students. We can use example, interaction with live missionaries, biographies of missionaries, films, documentaries about people, leaders, pastors, and other leaders in the marketplace. We can think about exposure, avail information, books, journals, periodicals, websites, and blogs. We can live interviews, maps of the world, conferences, speakers to handle designated topics where young people are gathered together. And we can think of experience. As a matter of fact, there is nothing that contributes so much like taking students out on where they can do something rather than just hearing only. Cross-cultural experience, missions engagement and outreach in remote places, attendance of a conference in another country, hosting foreigners, short-term involvement, concerted prayers in churches and small groups, social involvement among the needy, mentorship and attachment to an organization or an institution that is involve them in giving, help them in career decision making. As we give them experience, this will actually model the young people so that in the long run they are able to participate in missions. It's my contentions that there are those who have refused to let their lives be wasted away. They are determined to make a difference with their lives, with their time, with their resources, and with their professions, whether God has, wherever God has placed them. I quote again Kenneth Strachan that I had made reference to a little earlier on. He said, no matter how poor, no matter how ignorant, no matter how talentless the local congregation may be, it is the body of Christ in that locality. In it dwells the fullness of the Godhead bodily. It is endowed with all the responsibilities of the Christian church and with all the capabilities of fulfilling them. In other words, we should not ignore or neglect something that looks small or little, including young people in our churches and also in our organizations and as students as well. That they may look fairly insignificant, but as we say in my language, there's a fish that is called omena. It's the smallest fish that ever exists, but we say even omena is fish. In other words, even the smallest or youngest individuals can actually be used by God in order to extend his kingdom. Sometimes those of us who are involved in ministry tend to think that the young people need cake. A quote from Elizabeth Corey, Emory University professor, but they actually want steak and potatoes, and we keep giving them cake because we think they actually need cake. They want steak and potatoes. When we look at various cultures, the African culture, particularly the Maasai culture in my country, Kenya, they have a group that are called the Morans. The Morans are the warriors, they are the fighters. But they're usually young people, teenage going on up to age 18, 19. And they're usually the fighters. They are the ones who defend the community. They're the ones who are mobilized in order to fight. The word al-Shabaab, I learned, is an Arabic word that simply means the youth. And these young people have been giving the world quite a lot of problem, particularly those of us in this part of the world, because of the young people who are armed and they go out fighting and killing. But they are young people. Someone sells them a vision and they buy that vision. And as a result of that, we call them, they become radicalized. How beautiful it would be if we would also radicalize our young people for the Lord Jesus Christ, not to kill anyone, but to walk with the Lord and to follow the Lord. As a matter of fact, we may be looking in the horizon, wondering where the lion is, but the lion is actually behind us. We just need to turn behind and see the young people who are the lions behind us. I think a few questions for our reflection. How can we mobilize young people to be involved in world evangelization? What are some of the obstacles that we would encounter as we step out to do this? And how can we overcome them? Do we have a missions champion among the young people in our church, in our organizations, in our institutions? And what is his or her role as a missions champion? When we do have a champion, they'll actually be able to carry the work of mobilization, giving experience, and bringing about young people's experience with the Lord in missions. I think I'll end there. Thank you very much. I will leave for my brother Mark Kolo to also share.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Greetings, everyone from Abuja, Nigeria. I would like to share, just picking up from where Bishop Calisto Odede has taken us through. And I'd like to talk specifically about mobilizing students for missions, which he has given us a very, very clear foundation and very strong understanding of why young people are critical and the need for us to focus on the youth. I personally believe that God has his finger on young people. When you look at the scriptures, you see God working with young people, Joseph, David, Esther, Joshua. These are young people that God, called out in the prime of their youth, and God empowered them for specific missions in their generation. The same thing has happened all through history. So I would like to just break my presentation into 4 parts, each one actually beginning with a P. So we're going to look at the past. We're going to look at the potential that Africa has for playing a leading role if we're to mobilize the students and youth of Africa for global mission. Then we'll look at the pathway. How can we chart a course? How do we help them actually, how do we funnel them through a pipeline to get them actually involved, not just aware, but actually involved in missions? And then finally, I'll be making a few propositions. Okay, so beginning with the pathway, the past, Bishop Odede already mentioned some of the examples that we see in the past, the haystack prayer meeting, which led to the birth of non-denominational missions effort out of America, Cambridge 7, house 7 students, most of them out of Cambridge University, went all over the UK, mobilizing students and young people, eventually crossing the Atlantic, even onto the US, and mobilizing young people to go to the ends of the earth. And of course, the students' volunteer movement that erupted out of the US in the late 19th century and spanned several decades, where over 20,000 students, fresh graduates from college and universities, went to the ends of the earth and took the gospel with them. I believe that with the current emphasis on Africa being an epicenter of Christianity, one of the epicenters of Christianity, we owe it to the young generation to now become key players in the front line of taking the gospel beyond their cultures. A quick look at the potential. What really is available that can be harnessed and developed and channeled and deployed into global mission? When you look at this chart before us, you see how somebody has tracked how the growth of missionaries per continent over the last 100 years plus. I want to focus on the global south. Of course, there's the brown streak there, which helps us to see the contribution of Latin America that is growing. Asia has seen an upsurge in the last 20 or so years. Of course, South Korea has always been major players. China is now funneling out students and young people. And then, of course, movements like the Philippines and other countries in Asia. But you would notice that in Africa, we aren't yet making a significant contribution in terms of sending out missionaries. Statistics have shown that out of about 440,000 missionaries that are serving globally, Africa is contributing only about 25,000. Now, that's just about maybe 5% or so of the total number. We can't claim to be a country that has 40% of evangelicals worldwide in the next few years and making a contribution of only about 5%. I think the least we should make is a minimum of 25 to 50% of all evangelicals, of all missionaries in the global mission workforce. According to the UN report of 2022, 70% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 30. This is unprecedented. There is no other continent that has this level, this number of youth. Now, granted, not every young person in Africa is a Christian. And even among those who are Christians, not all are committed Christians. We have a huge pool of nominal young people in our churches. But think of what can happen if we could engage them and actually see a discipling movement happen among the young people and a mission mobilizing movement sparked among the students of Africa. I think that perhaps the greatest resource that the African church has to bless the world with is the huge number of young people. The Pew Research Center has released a report that 4 out of 10 evangelicals in the world will be from Africa by the year 2030. That means 4 out of every 10 people who claim to be born again on the planet would be from Africa. So going with the previous statistic that 75% of African young people, Africa's population is less than 35 years of age, it means that 3 out of the 4 will be youth. 3 out of the 4 will be youth. That's a huge number. That's huge potential just waiting to be mobilized. According to the Center for Mission Mobilization, if only 0.1% of all English-speaking evangelicals were mobilized to go, it would be the largest mission movement in history. Now, if Africa has the numbers, I think that what is missing is the right spark. And I like the illustration that that Bishop Odede quoted just a few minutes ago, how that we are serving them cake because we think that's what they need, when actually they are looking for steak and potatoes. I think that the young people of Africa have just not been challenged with a vision that demands all of them. Most times, I think what they are hearing in their campus fellowships and even the youth in our churches, I think it's not calling them out. It's not challenging them sufficiently to give their all. We are serving them cake because we think that's what they need. To me, Othniel represents a picture of a young person who was mobilized into mission. And he's mentioned in Joshua chapter 15, when Caleb was claiming territory. But Caleb got to a point as an older leader when Caleb recognized, hey, I can't finish this alone. I have been given territory to take, but I can't take it alone. So Caleb gives a challenge. We have to cast a clear vision. We have to motivate them by reward. But the third thing is that they must be spiritually empowered. The Bible says in Judges chapter 3, Caleb emerged as the first judge of Israel, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. We need a generation that know how to walk in the Spirit, live in the Spirit, move in the Spirit, and serve in the Spirit. Information by itself is not enough to sustain them. We need a spiritually empowered generation. Next slide. The fourth pathway we need to create is opportunities for them to lead locally. We need to equip them so that they can begin serving and doing missions right from campus. The Bible says that Othniel judged Israel. So before Othniel could go to any other nation, Othniel cut his teeth in ministry or in leadership in the same culture where he had grown up in. We need to equip young people on campus to begin to engage the unreached students on campus, students from other cultures that are studying in their same environment. He judged Israel. And then finally, we need to see a generation that can go cross-cultural. I won't mention much about this because Bishop Calisto Odede has done a great job of listing out various ways that students can begin to be exposed to cross-cultural missions. It says that Othniel went out to war. We need a generation that can be sent out to the places where there is great conflict for the souls of people. And leaders must create such pathways to give young people opportunities to have cross-cultural exposure, cross-cultural ministry opportunities and experiences so that they can see a wider world. I believe that if we create a framework that enables people from awareness to engagement, the young people of Africa would be a potent mission force waiting to be engaged. The final part of my presentation touches on three propositions I want to make very quickly. I'll just mention them and then we'll be out of this particular presentation. The first is that we need to aim lower. We need to begin to develop resources, home-developed resources that begin mobilization from adolescence. Young people, the age of 3, 4, 5, 6, need to begin to be exposed to missions at their levels. I've looked around the continent. I am not finding information and resources that expose youth, well, not youth, children to mission. Okay, we are using lots of material from the West, which is good, but we need contextualized material that aims at the young people so that they begin to understand the world of mission at a very young age, at an early stage in life. Those of the other religion, they've done a masterful work in exposing their children very, very early to the cause to which they believe. Secondly, we need to close the gaps. What do I mean by this? We need to close the gaps between students' ministries, prayer movements, churches and denominations, and mission agencies. We need to have greater collaboration, partnerships, and networking between those who have access to the numbers of students, be it in universities and colleges or high schools or even primary schools, to closing the gaps with churches and denominations, prayer movements, and mission agencies. We must all come to the table with a heart to labor together, not in our different individual silos. My third and last proposition is to go after the guns. Those who have already gone, these are international students. They are in the diaspora. They've already gone. We're not trying to get them to go. They've already gone. The question is, did they go with a vision? I don't have the time to share about the statistics of thousands, tens of thousands of African students that are, in fact, they are just all over the world, studying in different countries, including the 1040 window nations. The challenge is that the majority of those who call themselves Christians among them, they went without being sent. They have gone, but without a vision. We must mobilize them before they go, while they are gone, and when they come back. They have to leave LIVE and leave LEAVE with a vision that is way bigger than themselves. And my proposition is that we must aim lower, we must close the gaps, and we must go after the guns if we are going to see a mission mobilizing movement among the young people of Africa to bless the world with the gospel. Jesus said that the harvest is plenty and the laborers are few. I believe the laborers are few, yes, but potentially the laborers are many. The missing link is effective, sustained mobilization from childhood all the way to young adulthood when they can be ready to be sent. Thank you very much for listening.